Good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Just a week ago, not a week ago, maybe even now, you think of these heavy torrential rains that have walloped a lot of people in Limpopo there. As I was reading the Star yesterday, the newspaper, I see this bakkie, a truck, you know, which was trying to cross the bridge, and then it was swept. People died. And then I'm like, what does this mean? It's climate change. Is it climate change? Some might doubt, no, it's not climate change. It's just extremes. But it's a reality. It's with us. So, as I get into my presentation now, here is a technology, perhaps, that, as the director has indicated, Dr. Simelane has just alluded, which we can use in a myriad of possibilities, or in a myriad of ways, amongst which it can also try to, or attempt to address some of the challenges that we face in Africa and in the world at large. And it's the issue of floods, which I'll be looking at. I had a fieldwork last year, 2012, in Salaam, Tanzania, where I had some observations and experiences, and all in the bid to try and explore the ways in which we can make use of this tool for our better understanding and for us to adapt and be prepared for these climate extremes that we face. Hence, the topic of today is relevance of geospatial technologies in monitoring climate change-related disasters in Africa, with a special focus on floods in Dar es Salaam. My presentation will have just a brief introduction looking to the issue of climate extremes and some key definition terms that I think are relevant to put the study into context. And of course, for us to get an understanding of what Dar es Salaam is like, where is it, and of course the methodology, which is what we are trying to explore the potential of using geospatial technologies, and highlight some of the preliminary findings that we have so far. It's still a study in progress, nothing much has been done, but I think through this presentation you just get a sort of direction to which we want to take the study on. And of course I will conclude. Like Professor Namo indicated before, I think the issue of climate change being one of the sub-components within the green economy, if you want to put it, there is this issue of climate variability, not necessarily change, and of course the change itself that we are experiencing nowadays, which has caused considerable impact in sub-Saharan Africa. And today, yesterday, last week, and years back, which you can trace back, we have witnessed considerable impacts of climate change. The general trend in disasters in the region has shown an ever-increasing frequency of occurrence since the 60s, and where we experience longest dry spells, that's droughts, and then heavy torrential rains, which are within a very short space of time, but they cause serious havoc. We have witnessed, of course, many victims, and approximately about 1.5 million are being affected so far, according to the World Geospatial Report of 2004, which, that's 2004. We think of 2012 today, I'm sure this number is almost doubled if you look at the frequency and the extent to which we are receiving these climate extremes. Right. And realizing development, we need development, and there's rapid urbanization which is occurring across many parts of Africa and the world at large, and with it we have rapid population growth, and the impact, of course, has on the spatial distribution of people, and also the infrastructure that you find within the cities. And because this study is looking at Dar es Salaam, which is a coastal city, focus, of course, particularly is on coastal areas to this, although I will infer at a later stage to what we experience here in South Africa. Climate variability. We speak of short-term deviation of climate parameters, which could be temperature or rainfall, of a region that are varying from its long-term mean due to internal processes such as volcanicity, earthquakes, external forces such as industrialization, agricultural activities, and urbanization. And you know, there are certain months that you expect to, or you anticipate to receive rains. There comes the month, October, it's gone. There hasn't been any rain. November comes, it's gone, no rain. And then all of a sudden, you have heavy torrential rains, first rains of the year in December. And for those who particularly do say things like subsistence farming, you find in the village saying, because we knew that rain comes in October, we had already started plowing so that by the time the rain comes, it will catch us further. But unfortunately, we plow, now we need to re-plow again. And it's because of climate variability. Right. Let me also say, apart from the variability, you have the change now, where you have the long term, actually, it's more like a permanent trend that you have or that you envisage, particularly when it comes to weather patterns or the different climate parameters that you envisage. Right. Vulnerability, the degree to which a system is susceptible to or unable to cope with adverse effects of climate change. I say climate change because we are speaking about climate change now. It can be any other thing, but the bottom or the fundamental or something word that you need to underscore there is susceptibility or unable to cope. Vulnerability can be said to be a function of the character, the magnitude, rate of variation to which a system is exposed, its sensitivity and adaptive capacity, which I will explain again. Adaptive capacity is the ability to plan, to prepare for, and to implement adaptation measures. Some of the vectors which can be used to determine adaptive capacity include human system. Do we have the human resources or the skills required to adapt to a situation? Do we have the economic factors, finance in particular, capital that can be used for us to adapt to the situation? Do we have the technology that can be applied to help us understand or to help us adapt to the situation? Do we have the infrastructure that we can use or utilize to adapt to the challenge that we have? Do we have the knowledge and the skills? Right? Do we have the institutional capacity that are required to ensure that we adapt to the challenges? And of course, issues around equity and social capital are also critical. That's according to Edgar 2006. And I think some of these factors, again, they have been underscored in a book that has been published last year. Was it last year, on barriers to climate change by Dr. Leslie from IGD, which elaborates in depth on some of these key factors that are underlined with regards to adaptive capacity. Right. The study focus basically is looking in light of the increasing disasters and the impacts of climate change. I'm sure you would agree with me that adaptation is not an option, but a necessity. And I recall, Professor Nauma, I think you mentioned this, it's another gathering last year. They say we need to adapt. We can't continue having debates about there's climate change or there's no climate change. The reality unfolds and we need to adapt to it. I need an aircon in my office for me to live well. That's adapting to the harsh conditions that we experience in our day-to-day lives. The risk of floods remain unexplored, and the scope of impeding losses inadequately addressed. Why do I say so? Because floods, they occur over a very short space of time. Droughts, you can say, the past couple of months, we never received any rain, right? And the consequences, you start realizing them after a certain period of time. But floods, they are so sudden, and once they come, it might take even an hour, and the consequences or repercussions that you get out of that hour, they're just massive, right? And because of that, there haven't been many studies that have actually explored or tried to look at or assess the risk of these floods, which perhaps even in the case study of Dar es Salaam, which is it's a coastal city, but Tanzania in general, much of the country's land is not by the coast. And most of the studies that have been looking into this issue of climate extremes is studies that focus primarily on droughts, because the droughts are what the majority experience. But within the coastal city, floods issues, not much research has been done. Hence, this prompted this study as well. You find that there are many development plans and policy formations that overlook the risk, the impeding impact, coping and mitigation strategies, despite the growing concerns of climate change. People talk about it, and what do you do about it? Nothing. Right. Some of the questions that I found maybe that help carve part of the study is to try and identify the hotspots or population and economic assets which are normally affected by these droughts, and try to map Dar es Salaam's exposure and vulnerability extent to floods, and assess the present and adaptive measures that are put in place to address the issue of floods or climate extremes. Right. The study focus, like I said, is primarily to look at floods. Right. Here are some pictures that I got while I was in the field. They were taken on the 11th of December 2011. Here is a flood that occurred in Dar es Salaam. And look at those photos. You can imagine what happened to the bed where someone sleeps. Think of a television set which someone uses to watch, be it news or generations or whatever you might call it. Think of personal things. Just say your certificates for you to get employment. Think of, be it money or, in such a situation. Look at the first photo. For someone who was driving, what happened to him? For someone who was sleeping, what happened to her? Right. And about 15 deaths were recorded on this day. Right. And it's climate extremes. Here are the floods. Hence, the study is really interested in exploring this picky-headed element, if I may call it. Right. The study looked at the climate change adaptation cycle, right, from which you need to assess climate impacts and vulnerability. We need to plan for adaptation. We need to implement adaptation measures. We need to monitor and evaluate, right, and reassess again. So it's a cycle, right? But from all this, Rome was never built in a day. This study primarily focused on assessment of climate impacts and vulnerability or exposure to climate impacts, which is the focus, the primary focus of this study, to assess the impacts of climate extremes, which in this particular case is floods, on vulnerability. Right. The case is the case of Dar es Salaam, like I've alluded before. Right. It's located in the southeast coast of Tanzania. There you have your Tanzania and that small square on the map of Tanzania. That's its location. And Dar es Salaam itself, that's the bigger map that we have, which has got basically it's being run by 3 municipalities, Kinondoni,